Okay, I'm going to share. So can you see upcoming programs?
Yep.
So March 1, we have spirituality and photography. So not our usual how-to program, but I'm excited about this one. I'll send out more details about it as we get a little closer. I guess it's kind of a why we're taking our pictures. Good deal of it has to do with connection with nature. In middle of March, Sarah's started connecting with Hunt's Photo, and they're working on coming up with a program for the 15th. And then April 5, we have an in-person only salon, the first one for a very long time. And it's also an opportunity to resume the print competition, which we also haven't had for a very long time because of COVID and Zoom meetings. So I'm excited about that. The April 19th meeting is a hybrid. We'll try to get the technical problems figured out before then. And then May 3 is Michael Huber on drone photography, which, if I understand correctly, will be mostly outside. So there's more on the website, but that's the upcoming programs. Again, I'll talk about membership renewals. If anyone on this Zoom meeting has not renewed, please do so. You should have gotten something from Brian, and I believe he's going to be sending out a reminder. So we have a valuable commodity here. It's worth paying for, in my mind. And so please renew. Since we met last time, or since I talked about this last time about smartphone photography, the original concept was that it was going to be a assignment once a year perhaps, but Terry had the good idea of making it a category, so it will now be a 5th category on our salons. So that's going to start in April, and rules are pretty simple. The picture has to be taken with a smartphone, can be any kind of subject matter, and you'll have the opportunity to submit up to 5 digital images, assuming that one of them is in the phone category. If you don't submit in the phone category, then you're back to 4 images, which still is plenty. But the idea is to encourage people to have a smartphone image in the phone category. And backing up a second, we've always accepted smartphone pictures. So this isn't absolutely new, but it's new that we're making it a category and making more of an emphasis on it. So there are the categories as a reminder, and I'll send out a link to the updated rules when I send out the recording later. Again, a reminder about the spring break for the Canberra Council. I also will send out the links at that same time. It's March 11. It's coming up. I attended one of these. It was a great experience. focuses on portrait photography and macro. Good lunch. Lots of vendors there. And the results of the interclub competition at the end of the day. So lots of stuff to enjoy and learn. That's it. I will stop sharing, and well, any other announcements from anyone? Regardless, I'll stop sharing and turn it over to Terry.
It says you've disabled screen sharing.
Yep, I did that for me, and I'm just made you a host.
So can I ask a question? That
Yep.
spring, that's an in-person meeting, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And question, I think I've been a member of the club for maybe not quite 2 years, and it was almost all hybrid, except for maybe one meeting that I made. So the print competition, you're bringing in an actual photographic print, and typically is that just the print, or is it mounted, framed, or how do people do that?
Yeah, good questions.
Can I answer that?
Please do. Yeah.
Well, prints are different from digital images, obviously, and the presentation matters. And we do, I think in our rules, we do require that they be matted somewhat. I guess I'd have to take a look at the rules, but presentation does matter. And, you know, I was just at the Minnetonka Camera Club on Sunday where they were judging the prints. And there were prints that were submitted that were put on cardboard with cardboard showing, and a little print on a big hunk of cardboard. And those images did not score well.
So I wish I had a more detailed answer to your question, but what I'll do is it's been so long since we've had a print competition that I've forgotten all the details of the rules, but it's clearly outlined in the rules, and I'll send out a link to those tomorrow to everybody.
Yeah. Well, the rules, this is Steve Cole. The rules state basically you have to have at least an 8x10 photo presented, preferably mounted, and no larger than 16x20, including the mat. So you got a wide range of sizes that you could present, from 8x10 to 16x20.
And that's all spelled out in the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we have two categories, color and black and white.
Mm-hmm. Which segues very nicely into Gary's presentation.
Yeah, well, I think I'm ready to begin. I think you can see my Lightroom catalog.
Yeah,
and
everybody, I'm sorry, everybody mute if you haven't already done so. I will shut up and Terry can take over.
Okay. I call this presentation a personal vision. It's my own personal vision. In the last, well, for years, I grabbed every book I could about different areas of photography, and they all have a different slant. And you can find a lot of videos on YouTube. So this is my own personal way of looking at black and white. So why black and white? I think sometimes color gets in the way. And oftentimes a high contrast black and white has more impact than a lower contrast color image. And that word impact is very important because that's the one thing that most judges look at. It has a big difference in the score that you get in a salon or in any kind of judging. It has to have impact. Now here's a photo that I took in France. And I thought those reflections across the river were pretty nice. And this is how I developed it. It got rid of those color distractions. And it just seemed to have a lot of impact. Why black and white? Black and white without color distractions can help to focus on form and texture. And here's an example. Now here's a photo that I took of tulips. And people ask me sometimes, how did I get those tulips to flow like that? Well, I actually put the tulips alongside a large east-facing window where there was light coming in. And I actually laid this on the floor where the tulips were really on the floor. They weren't in the air. And this is how I developed it in black and white. And this is the first time I entered the interclub competition. I entered this as a print and I got first place out of about 99 images that had been submitted. And I don't know, I've had a lot of people ask for prints of this. Black and white can also invoke a mood. This is a picture that I took in France, in Oradour. And this was actually a museum that was acres huge. They're just a huge place. And I went there in a class with Jeff Morgan, and he took us there. And there was a building before you got to the grounds, and it showed what happened to Oradour. What happened was on June 10th, 1944, 643 people who lived in that village were massacred by the SS Panzer Division. And this village was preserved so that people would not forget what happened. And I converted this image to a black and white. And when I first went in here, I thought, how can I take pictures here? I was crying when I left the entryway where they showed pictures of what had happened. And I think there was only one person who survived. And so this black and white, most of the images from there, I converted to black and white. I didn't even want the color images. Okay, here's some before and after examples. This is a mum that I got at a florist shop, and I took this photograph on a tabletop studio. And I really didn't like the green. That was the reason I decided to go to black and white. And this was the result. Another example of my tabletop studios and flowers. You're going to see some flowers here tonight, but there's other reasons to use black and white. I laid these tulips on, it wasn't a mirror, it was on glass that had been painted on the backside with black. And I would get these lovely reflections. And this is the conversion that I did. And I'm a great gardener, or I was at one time, had all kinds of flowers all around. Here's one of my favorite hostas. This is the before, and this is the after. And I liked how in here, compared to this one, these were distracting to me. And so I got rid of a lot of that distraction, and the flower itself became the star. This is another one in my garden, a lily. And this is the monochrome that I made out of it. So far, all of these black and white conversions that I've shown you have won awards. Now here's from a shoot with my granddaughter. And she is just so precious. But I liked what black and white did to her eyes.
Hmm.
And then another one from that same shoot with her, I actually used to use Corel Painter quite a bit, and I turned that into a painting. And I really liked that, really liked the result. So how do you capture black and white images? I know a lot of cameras have settings where you can shoot in black and white, but you don't want to do that. You want to use RAW format in the highest quality, and that allows the best working file with all the color channels intact. Exposed to the right, you can see over here the histogram. And so there's just gray and white in this image, so there's not a whole lot going on in the histogram. And do you know what exposed to the right means? You want to get as many lights as you can out of the image, because it's easy to darken areas of images. But if you try to brighten images that haven't been exposed to the right, you end up with a lot of noise. And black and white conversions can bring out the worst in your file. So you need to start with the best possible exposure. Now, if anybody has any questions, just, shout out to me. Okay, there's a lot of different processing options. I'm using, and they should be non-destructive. I believe in non-destructive processing. I use Lightroom. I use Photoshop. They have a black and white layer adjustment. And in Photoshop, I also have the Nick Silver Effects Pro plugin. And this high structure and wet rocks are a couple of their presets that you use that I like a lot. I find myself using them. And then you can also do some dodging and burning after you make a black and white conversion. Okay, here's a raw file, another tabletop photo that I took. Again, tulips. And let's see here. All right. I want to, okay. Remember what I said about exposing to the right? I did not do that here. You can see that there's the brightest part of the image is in the middle. You don't want to do that. So do as I say, but don't do as I do. Now this one I did a little bit in Lightroom to brighten up the image, and I cropped it. And I don't know why I've got this here, but okay. Yeah, okay, this shows the image as I imported it. I converted to black and white in the develop module. You can see here before this was color. And so then you just click on the black and white here. And when you're in black and white, you can go to this dialog here and you can play around with these. Now I wanted to make the background dark. And it was blue in the original. And so you could play around with the blue channels. You can lighten or darken that. I'm not going to do that here because I do have the history here over on the left side. And so I had moved the blue over here to darken that background. And I use the point curve. And in the basic panel, you can see where I raise the highlights and the whites. And I darken the shadows here. Oops. Well, we went back in time here. So here we are back at here. Well, we don't want to go that far. Okay, here's a virtual copy where I converted to black and white and made those changes down here. Okay, so let's take this image, and I'm going to go on to Photoshop. Okay. Now here is actually that image, the way I took it, I didn't like the way this petal was concave, so I fixed it. Now what we can do here in Photoshop is make a black and white adjustment layer right here. And then you get this dialog where you've got the same sliders that you have in Lightroom. And I wanted to darken the blues to add some contrast. I wanted to darken those greens. I wanted to lighten the yellows. I don't think the reds do anything. And there isn't really anything in that photo that's very red, except just the pistils in here. So that's one way of converting this to black and white. I'm going to delete that. Well, here, I'll delete it. But here is where I would work on this image with Silver FX Pro. Okay. I need to try to move this over. Over here. So, well, my presets, the presets are over here. There's actually quite a few. And I'm going to just kind of cycle through a few of them. That has too much contrast. It's too dark. Although it's one of my favorite. And what you can do here then is you can do some global adjustments on here. You can raise the contrast here. You can use a control point here, where you can increase the brightness. And you can copy this. Another thing that you can do with Nik Silver FX Pro is you can do some toning. And cyanotype is one that I really like to use. But there's any number of toning you can do, and it's still considered a black and white. Um, you can add a vignette. You can burn the edges. Let's see if there's some choices here. Yeah, you can. So anyway, so we'll just go with this. Now, the nice thing about Nick Silver Effects Pro, it doesn't hurt the original image. So we can close out of this now. I don't want to save that. So when I have a nice vase of tulips or a nice bunch of tulips, I like to make the most of them. I did a little bit better job exposing these to the right. And I cropped this. I cropped it again. I converted to black and white. And I did the same thing in here that that I did in the previous one. I made the blues darker. And I brought out the centers of the tulips with the yellow. And then in the basic panel, I increased, I reduced the shadows here. And I really darkened the background. Added clarity. And that was the finished image. Here. Did a little more cropping. Okay. This is the original image I shot at Gooseberry Falls. And everything in here was done in Lightroom. I made a virtual copy first. And I cropped it. Didn't like that crop as well. I needed to have a little more space on top here. Talking about waterfalls, we had a speaker at our club. Rick Floor came and talked about waterfalls of all things. You don't think of him as that. But one of the things he said is you don't want the water to flow out of the picture. And these rocks were able to stop. That's, when I composed in the camera, I just wanted to make sure the water wasn't flowing out of the picture. I converted to black and white. And I made some of those, I made some of the same things here. I had to play around quite a bit. And I put a nice vignette on it. Okay, now here's a waterfall at Amnicon Falls. Yeah, and I think I took this right into Photoshop. I'm going to get a sip of water here while Photoshop is opening. Okay, here as you can see the image, I'm only showing the original photo here. And I got rid of this branch that was in the bottom left here. I didn't like that. I thought it was drawing attention, so I got rid of that here. And then I made a copy of the image that included both of those layers. It's called the stamp tool. And you get a stamp of everything that's visible by hitting about 4 keys at the same time. It's like Control-Shift-Alt. I think that you can get a stamp like that. And then I had taken this image into Nick software and got this high structure, used at high structure setting. And then I've got this dodge and burn layer here, but I'm going to recreate that. I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to fill it. Edit, fill. I'm going to fill it with 50% gray. And then I'm going to change the blend mode on that to overlay. Hey, it looks this layer, I'm going to take the visibility away. It's the same as, it looks the same. That's what that overlay does. Now with a brush, with the brush tool, the white is the active color. And with the white brush, let's make it a little bit bigger here. And keep the softness low. And anything that you paint over that's lighter than 50% gray, you can brighten that. Well, that's a little too much. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to bring this down here. And I'm going to reduce the opacity. Maybe 10%. And then now when I go over those, it's just about right. And I'm doing this, I'm brightening certain areas with the paintbrush. And you can kind of guide the eye by doing that. And this is how I'd done it before. So that's dodging and burning. So I like black and white for waterfalls. This is actually the raw image taken at the hidden falls along the Temperance River. You have to hike back there. And this is a conversion that I did in Lightroom first. And this has got done with the Nick Silver Effects Pro. And this was Wet Rocks, the Wet Rocks. This was a photo that I actually a landscape that I did, a panorama that I did. This was was actually 3 or 4 different exposures. This was in California, or in the road to California. And the conversion here was done with Nick Silver Effects Pro. Okay, you don't have to do flowers only or waterfalls. There's a lot of other subjects that are great for black and white. One of them is street photography. This was taken in France. I'd gone on a trip with Valerie Jardin for street photography. And what I learned there is that I didn't really like street photography. I never got comfortable with taking pictures of people without their knowledge or without asking them first. But I thought this made a really nice black and white conversion. And black and white seems to add a lot of authenticity to street photography. Here's another photo that I took on that same trip, and the black and white conversion. And the detail in this was incredible. This was taken handheld. This image I submitted to the Interclub competition 5 or 6 years ago. And it didn't even get an acceptance. I made this nice, big, beautiful print with all this detail in it, and it didn't even get an acceptance. Well, guess what? About 3 years ago, I wanted to enter a print in the Interclub competition. And I thought, well, maybe I should submit this again. And it won first place. Here's a way that you can use this in, for a time, I like going downtown St. Paul and Minneapolis and getting city lights. They just dazzled me. And this is a black and white conversion. And I use that Nick Silver Effects Pro to apply the cyanotype color to this. I liked it better than, here we try seeing what it would look like in black and white. That doesn't do the same for me. Now here's a bridge in Hastings, a railroad bridge in Hastings. I love the clouds. I love these, I don't know what to call them. They're like gossamer clouds, and they really added, I thought, a lot to this photo. And this was taken at a little church near Baldwin, which is no longer a church. They have weddings there. And we had a group go there one time from the club. So another street type photography, street type photo, black and white. It adds authenticity. What I liked about this photo is these two women right here are looking at the menu, and they're looking, they're really excited about it. And the husband of one of them, or the guy there, he's looking there and he's just trying to make sense out of it. I thought it was kind of funny. This is a photo taken in Italy and at Pompeo. Another one in France, in the Eiffel Tower, the city of love. You see lovers around all the time. And it was easy to convert this to black and white because, and have these figures who were pretty much in black because of the lighting there. And this was in one of the art museums in Paris. And this was taken on a photo walk, I think to Stillwater quite a few years ago. And I'd like to, I took a bunch of photos, and what I liked best was this one with the diagonal and the brightness of what's going on here on the wheel, and it kind of removed all the distractions of the rest of the bike. So in summary, let's see here. People have asked me, do I see in black and white? No, I don't. I see in color, and I love color. But what makes a compelling black and white image? It's got to be technically sound. And if you can tell by the photos that you've seen so far tonight of mine, they've got to be simple compositions that include only what supports the subject. And I try to do that in whether it's color image or a black and white. A smooth tonal range that includes strong blacks and highlights, in other words, contrast. That is the real big deal to me. You've got to have that contrast. And sometimes I don't think you can go too dark. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to quit sharing my screen.
Fabulous, Terry. I have a question. You were doing dodging and burning with that 50%
Gray layer.
gray layer. That's an advantage over dodging and burning, just straight dodging and burning, I take it?
Well, that is dodging and burning. And when you use that 50% gray layer, you can change the opacity, you can change the brightness, the brightness and how soft. You can have a bigger and smaller brush. And it's got a lot of, it can do quite a bit.
So it gives you more control.
It does.
Okay.
Now I know I work with Lightroom and Photoshop, and I have plugins, and those things all cost money. I know there are other programs out there who will do probably about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a contrast, and but I think that I'm sure you have done it yourself, is that there are a lot of images that don't require that are much more subtle, and for example, a photograph in the fog. There's plenty of images that do not require high contrast. I know that I am guilty of sometimes using too much contrast, and I think that and in part because, as you said, it does draw attention to it, but by the same token, it sometimes detracts from the image. And so I don't know, I'm not a believer in everything needing high contrast, and I suspect you aren't either.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got, what I like about having high contrast images is they have more impact for the most part. That's my belief. And I think really in black and white anyway, you need to have a full range of tones. But I hardly think that you can even hurt an image by having too much dark. That's my own philosophy. And that's why I titled my program, My Personal View.
Yep.
but it's, you know, my view has worked
Mhm.
in winning the awards that I've won. Now, are we taking pictures only for awards? You know, I've looked at the photos on my computer. I've got thousands, and I've taken family photos, and I've taken, you know, travel photos, and I've taken photos in my yard. And I'm getting older now, and I'm looking at those images, and I'm wondering what's going to happen to them. I know my kids are going to want some of them, but they're not going to want pictures of a bridge in Hastings. They're not going to want to have a picture of something I took in Pompeii. They're going to want family photos. And I believe that we need to take all kinds of photos. And don't forget our children and grandchildren.
There was a question earlier. I'm not seeing it on the chat anymore, but someone asked, going way back to the new phone category, and they were asking if you can use filters or if you can manipulate the pictures, and the answer is yes, you can do anything you want to the picture with filters or with Photoshop or Lightroom or any other software. The only requirement is that it starts in a smartphone.
I do see another question here. When I take a picture, do I think of what it will look like in black and white? I don't normally. I don't go out to take pictures that I can convert to black and white. But I showed that one photo of the railroad bridge in Hastings, and it had those fabulous clouds. And when I was taking that picture, I thought, that's going to be a marvelous black and white. But I don't, like I said, I don't see in black and white. I see in color, and I am entranced by it. I go crazy for different colors.
Mhm. Any other questions? Guess not. This was fabulous, Tara. I'm going to watch this again because I have some things to learn from you, from the work you did in Lightroom and Photoshop with these. So,
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being invited to do this.
mhm.
And we appreciate you doing it.
Yeah,
Oh, thanks,
very
Chappie.
much. So I think we're done. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Terry. Nice job. Great job.
Thank you. Good night, Steve. Thanks.
Good night.